On the eve of my wedding to my childhood sweetheart, my sister came to me with an ultrasound, telling me she was pregnant with my fiancé's child. When her attempts to force me to call off the wedding failed, she left a suicide note and jumped to her death. 2 lives lost. From that day on, my childhood sweetheart hated me to the core. He forced me to bear his child, only to strangle our baby in its cradle. His eyes were bloodshot as he gripped my chin. Margaret, her child was never born. And your child doesn't deserve to live either. I was reborn on the eve of the wedding banquet. Pretending not to see the cunning in my sister's eyes, I smiled faintly. Fine, I'll agree to call off the engagement. Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I died from amniotic fluid embolism. When I died, blood soaked through the entire hospital bed. I desperately begged Wade to save me. But he looked at me as if I were an ant, gripping my neck tightly. So what if I got engaged to you first? Phyllis and I truly love each other, yet you insisted on tearing us apart, causing her to die with her unborn child. You vicious woman. What right do you have to marry me or occupy my wife's position? Go underground and find Phyllis to beg for forgiveness and repent. It was clearly them who were having an affair, yet I became the one to bear all the consequences. Phyllis is my father's illegitimate child. Seeing her adrift and helpless, I kindly asked my father to bring her into our home. Little did I know that this momentary act of kindness would ruin my entire life. Phyllis was cunning and deep. After entering our home, she pretended to befriend me while secretly seducing my fiancé behind my back. By the time I found out, she was already pregnant with Wade's child. I'll never forget the triumphant and provocative look in her eyes when she announced her pregnancy. Sister, we're both daughters of the Winston family. What you desire, I desire too. Wade is mine now. She thought that by relying on her pregnancy, she could marry into a wealthy family, but the Terrence family never acknowledged her as their illegitimate daughter and publicly declared me as the only daughter-in-law they would recognize. In no time, Phyllis's affair with her brother-in-law spread throughout City A, making her the laughingstock of the entire city. Phyllis blamed all the mistakes on me. On my wedding day, she jumped from the rooftop of the hotel, dying at the moment Wade loved her the most. It has also made me live my entire life in her shadow. Back then, when the Terrence family's funding chain broke, it was I who brought a dowry of millions to help Wade secure his position as the heir, yet now, I've ended up in such a state. With a desperate laugh, I said, love knows no order of arrival. Wade frowned. Love knows no first come, first served, but a person should have propriety and shame. Wade, back then, I brought a dowry of millions to save your Terrence family from dire straits, yet you betrayed me by having an affair with my sister-in-law, breaking faith and disregarding morality. I laughed until tears streamed down my face. You want me to repent? Yes, I should repent. I should never have married into your family. And I certainly shouldn't have fought for you in the Terrence family. I'll watch from above as you lose the support of the Winston family and see if you can still hold on to your position as chairman. I'll wait for the day you fall into hell, beyond all redemption. After a final, hoarse outcry, I finally closed my eyes, filled with endless regret. If I could start over, I would never choose to live this kind of life again. Trashy men and cheap women. Get the hell out of here. Margaret, wake up. Your sister is using the baby in her belly to force your whole family to submit. An anxious voice called out. My head was splitting with pain, and when I opened my eyes again, the anxious face before me was none other than my former best friend Susan. I had been reborn to the day before my wedding with Wade. Susan stood up for me indignantly, saying, Phyllis is utterly shameless. If it weren't for you taking pity on her back then, how could she be living the good life she has now? And instead of being grateful, she has the audacity to seduce your fiancé, a mere illegitimate child, yet she dares to dream of marrying into wealth in your place. In my past life, Susan had said these very words to me as well. Now I no longer have the anger from my past life. Phyllis thought that by seducing Wade and getting pregnant, she could replace me and marry into the Terrence family. In her dreams, Wade is a pretty but useless man obsessed with beauty, but the old lady of the Terrence family is not. Could she not see this was a temptress? She immediately rejected my father, saying the daughter-in-law of the Terrence family could only be me. Margaret. Phyllis lost her virtue and her dignity, which is why she wept and pleaded endlessly the night before my wedding. I shook my head with a light laugh, my gaze firm as I said, don't worry, she won't marry into the Terrence family. Phyllis was the one rejected by Grandma Terrence. Even if Phyllis doesn't care about her own dignity, the Winston family still values their reputation. Sure enough, as soon as I went downstairs, I heard the sound of Grandma smashing a teacup. You disgrace. How dare you come begging after doing such a shameless thing? At this moment, Phyllis was kneeling on the ground, crying pitifully. Grandma, you and Grandma Terrence are old friends. Who else can Phyllis turn to besides you? Besides, everyone only says the Winston family and the Terrence family are uniting through marriage. I'm also a daughter of the Winston family. Why can only my sister marry into a prestigious family? Grandma, you shouldn't favor one over the other. My grandmother clenched her teeth in anger at her. How dare you say that? You seduced your sister's man, and you expect me to celebrate and send you into a wealthy family. If I had known you were such a shameless creature, I never should have agreed to bring you back to the Winston family. Someone, tie her up and take her back to her room. Don't let her out to humiliate us before the wedding tomorrow. I watched coldly as Phyllis was about to be dragged away, my gaze icy. Phyllis suddenly broke free from the maid and rushed at me, cursing venomously. Margaret, Wade and I are truly in love. Even if you get his hand, you'll never have his heart. I'm already carrying Wade's child. And Wade will bring me into the Terrence family sooner or later. Don't you dare think you can take my place. Don't you dare. Grandma's face turned livid with anger, her pointing hand trembling uncontrollably. At that moment, sudden footsteps echoed from outside. Phyllis caught sight of Wade approaching in her peripheral vision and instantly performed a Sichuan opera-style face change, dropping to her knees before me with tearful pleas. Sister, all faults are Phyllis's faults. I'm willing to accept any punishment. I only beg you to spare the child's life. Don't force me to have an abortion. The next moment, she seemed to be pushed hard by someone, let out a scream, and fell backward. But the look she gave me was full of the cunning of a scheme accomplished. Yet I clearly didn't touch her. I sneered, feeling the frozen heart gradually regain its vitality. In her past life, she bullied the weak with her strength, ruining my entire life. Does she really think the same tricks will work again in this life? Sister, why did you push me? I screamed even more pitifully than her, my face filled with terror as I tumbled down the stairs. Margaret, Phyllis, before losing consciousness. All I heard were several panicked exclamations in my ears. When I woke up again, I was lying on a hospital bed, with Wade and Grandma arguing nearby. Wade said coldly, Grandma Winston, Phyllis has tolerated her repeatedly. Yet Margaret still pushes her limits. How is such a person worthy of being the daughter-in-law of our Terrence family? I slightly furrowed my brow but quickly composed myself. My father might still be wavering between his two daughters, but my grandmother was firmly on my side. It was my granddaughter who endured everything. And it was also my granddaughter who was pushed down the stairs by that wretched woman and remains unconscious to this day. My grandmother's voice was icy, and she didn't even bother to lift her eyelids. Mr. Gong, though I may be old, I am neither deaf nor blind. Grandma had been the matriarch of the Winston household for years, and her words carried undeniable authority. Wade was momentarily intimidated, but quickly retorted, fine, let's set aside these trivial matters. Our families are to be united tomorrow. If you refuse to let Phyllis take her sister's place in this marriage, I'd rather call off the engagement than wed Margaret. Such a venomous woman. His gaze turned icy as he added, Grandma Winston, surely you wouldn't want your granddaughter to bear the stigma of being a jilted bride. My grandmother seemed not to have expected that Wade could become so despicable and shameless for Phyllis. In my past life, Grandma firmly rejected Wade, which triggered a chain of events, but in this lifetime, I won't let such things happen again. I gently tugged at Grandma's sleeve. Grandma was astute enough to realize that since I was awake but hadn't opened my eyes, I must have something to say to her privately. You go out first, I need to think it over. Wade was smug, thinking he had hit Grandma's sore spot, and strode proudly to the next room to see Phyllis. Margaret, you're awake. Grandma's aged face was filled with delight. She seemed to guess that I had overheard their earlier conversation and quickly reassured me. Good child, Grandma knows you love Wade. Don't worry, as long as Grandma is here, that troublemaker Phyllis won't be able to steal your position. My precious will always be the daughter-in-law of the Terrence family. Looking at my aged grandmother, my heart ached with sorrow. In my past life, my marriage was unhappy, causing Grandma to worry about me day and night. When she learned that Wade had strangled my first child, she couldn't bear the shock and passed away. In this life, I must keep Grandma by my side. Grandma, I don't want to get married anymore. Let's call off the engagement. Grandma knew well how deeply I loved Wade, and she asked in disbelief, what did you say? Staring at the hospital's pale white ceiling, I recalled the miserable state of my death in my past life, my eyes stinging as I said, call off the engagement. How can one grow old together with someone so cold-hearted? But you pleaded for so long to secure this marriage, Grandma said with pity. Only Grandma knew how much effort I had expended to win the favor of the Terrence family. The Terrence family matriarch was fond of Buddhism, so I kowtowed my way to Mount Wutai to fetch her blessed prayer beads. For her 80th birthday, I copied Buddhist scriptures in my own blood, earning the Terrence family matriarch's special favor. But no matter how much the Terrence family matriarch favored me, it was useless. Wade's heart could never be warmed in this lifetime. I refused to waste another ounce of effort on him. Perhaps illness brings renewal. This fall has made me see many things clearly. My eyes were as deep and still as an ancient well as I said self-mockingly. What is there to miss about a man who cheats with his sister-in-law, a man who stops at nothing to achieve his goals? How could such a person be entrusted with a lifetime? Wade supported Phyllis as they walked out of the neighboring hospital room. Seeing me awake, he immediately said, "It's good you're awake, Margaret. If you don't want to be the laughingstock of the whole city, obediently let Phyllis take your place in the marriage. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." Grandma calmed down a lot after listening to my advice. A disgraceful act like substituting brides is something our Winston family would never do. If you insist on changing the bride, let's just cancel the marriage agreement between the families. I looked at Wade, and sure enough, I could see a hint of panic in his eyes. I knew that Wade only wanted Phyllis to be the substitute bride, not to sever ties with the Winston family. The Terrence family and the Winston family are both prominent families in City A. Their marriage alliance has long been known throughout the city. Moreover, the Terrence family's capital chain has broken, and they are eagerly awaiting my dowry of millions for relief. Have him break off the engagement, Grandma Terrence would probably skin him alive. Wade looked somewhat uneasy and softened his tone, saying, "Grandma, why get so angry? The marriage alliance between the families is a done deal. Phyllis and Margaret are both daughters of the Winston family. Isn't marrying either one the same if this escalates? Wouldn't it just make our two families a laughingstock?" Phyllis was also terrified upon hearing the words annul the engagement. Breaking out in a cold sweat, I sneered inwardly, wondering why Phyllis was so afraid of the two families calling off the engagement. The reason was quite simple, because if she didn't take the place of the bride, her status would never allow her to reach the doorstep of the Terrence family in her lifetime. Phyllis hurriedly knelt at Wade's feet, pleading pitifully, "Wade, all the faults are Phyllis's alone. Don't let Phyllis's mistakes tarnish the reputations of both families. Just let Phyllis and the child fend for themselves." Yet, words so blatantly manipulative appeared to Wade as Phyllis's selfless consideration for the greater good. Moved yet exasperated, he said, "Phyllis, how can you be so kind? Even now, you're still willing to sacrifice yourself." Grandma couldn't take it anymore and snapped coldly. If she were truly kind, she wouldn't have seduced her own sister's man. Some people may have eyes, but they're as good as blind. Wade also sensed something was amiss and frowned at Phyllis. Phyllis immediately panicked, shaking her head incessantly as tears fell like strings of pearls, evoking pity. "No, Wade, it's not like that. I didn't know you were my sister's boyfriend at the time. I just couldn't help myself, and I'll get rid of the baby right away. So Wade and my sister won't be troubled." Phyllis made as if to leave. Wade, seeing the beauty in tears, he immediately cast aside his suspicions, holding her hand as if she were a precious jewel. "Silly girl, don't say such things. Who dares to lay a finger on Wade's child?" With that, his gaze turned to me, filled with resentment. "You vicious woman, Phyllis is already like this. Must you drive her to death before you're satisfied?" I laughed in extreme anger. "Drive her to death? Wade, you really know how to turn the tables, don't you? It's clearly you who did something shameless, yet you're trying to pin the blame on me. Moreover, if you and Phyllis are truly in love, why don't you personally go and beg Grandma Terrence? You vowed to Grandma Terrence, willing to give up your status as the eldest son of the Terrence family, just to be with Phyllis. What could Grandma Terrence possibly do to you? In the end, it's just wanting the best of both worlds. Unable to let go of beauty, and even more reluctant to part with wealth, I looked directly at Wade, pretending to be moved by them, and lowered my eyes, saying, "Since you are truly in love, I can't say much more." Phyllis thought I was about to agree to the substitute marriage and was just starting to gloat. I deliberately pretended to hesitate and said, "However, this matter of a substitute marriage isn't something I can decide alone. It still requires Grandma Terrence's approval. Since you insist on marrying none but her and she insists on marrying none but you, then go back and seek Grandma Terrence's permission. If she agrees to let my sister marry into your family, our Winston family will have no objections." As soon as I said this, my grandmother immediately became furious. How could we let that wretched Phyllis marry into the Terrence family? But I gave her an almost imperceptible shake of my head, signaling her to stay calm. In my past life, I married into the Terrence family for 5 years and knew Grandma Terrence's personality well. She would never allow a vixen like Phyllis to enter the household, which is why Wade kept trying to work on me. But how could I let this scumbag and his mistress have it easy? If you want to marry Phyllis, fine, first get past Grandma Terrence's approval. Sure enough, Wade angrily retorted, Margaret, do you think I don't dare? Just wait and see. With that, he took Phyllis and stormed off. I watched Wade's retreating figure, sneering repeatedly, Wade, in my past life, I refused to marry in your stead to save your dignity. This lifetime, I'll grant you your wish. I'm eager to see what kind of scene will unfold when you go to Grandma Terrence on the eve of the wedding to demand a bride swap. The Terrence family will surely make a spectacle. My child, you've suffered so much, don't worry. Grandma will definitely find you a better marriage. Grandma looked at me with eyes full of tenderness and guilt, believing it was the Winston family who wronged me. I could only smile self-deprecatingly, my long lashes lowering as images of my miserable death in my past life flooded my mind. All crows are black under the sky. What difference does it make whom I marry? In this life, I only seek my own carefree happiness. Grandma, why are you in such a hurry to marry me off? Don't you want your granddaughter to stay home and keep you company longer? I deliberately hugged Grandma's arm and acted coquettishly. Silly child, even if Grandma wanted to keep you, I couldn't let you stay unmarried forever. Grandma took my hand and said lovingly, my granddaughter is the finest girl in City A. Wade falling for that little wretch was his loss, just because of one rotten fish. Are you going to refuse marriage forever? You're still young, with such a long life ahead. If you keep avoiding difficulties, what will you do in the future? You're good in every way, always putting my mind at ease, except for being too sentimental. Deep affection does not last long, and extreme wisdom brings harm. You must learn to love, but not without reservation. Do you understand? Deep affection does not last long, and extreme wisdom brings harm. Hearing my grandmother's words was like clouds parting to reveal the sun, striking a chord deep within me. In my past life, I pondered for so many years without grasping this truth. Yet my grandmother articulated it so clearly in just a few words. The field that had died in my heart has sprouted new shoots once again. Yes, even that despicable couple deserves love, so why can't I? Should I give up my right to love just because of temporary pain? How could I face my grandmother's advice then? Father had no sons, only me and Phyllis as his 2 daughters. Grandmother raised me like a boy. Otherwise in my past life I wouldn't have been able to help Wade seize power and secure the position of chairman for the Terrence family. Now that I've been reborn, how could I possibly remain defeated? It's just a pity that in my past life, I was too naive, always believing that sheer effort alone could earn genuine affection, only to meet a tragic end in the end. Moreover, my grandmother suddenly changed her tone, revealing a mysterious smile as she declared confidently, if I say you'll marry into the Terrence family, then you'll definitely marry into the Terrence family. Grandma, you mean? I was somewhat surprised. Grandma revealed a shrewd smile and said with dignified elegance, the Terrence family has more than just Wade as a son. There are plenty of fine young men. My granddaughter will not only marry, but she will have a grand wedding. Terrence's home other sons. After much deliberation, a cold and ascetic figure suddenly flashed through my mind. And I exclaimed in shock, you want me to marry Wade's uncle? To be honest, there's quite a history between me and this man. In my past life, I was Wade forcibly taken for an abortion out of revenge. Terrence's family also followed the trend, treating me, the young mistress, with increasing coldness until I could barely get a warm meal, yet this proud man delivered hot porridge to me for an entire month, though it was just the kindness of a single meal. That warmth was rare and precious during my 5 years at Terrence's house. It's just a pity that Wade feared his uncle and secretly drugged Virgil, ultimately causing him to become terminally ill. Counting the time, Wade should have just drugged his uncle. Can I change his fate in this rebirth? My grandmother said with admiration in her eyes. Yes, although that child is 7 years older than you. He's a steady and responsible young man. Grandma Terrence hasn't made up her mind yet. The Terrence family's future heir isn't necessarily decided. Grandma patted my hand and said, Margaret, you must seize this opportunity. Hearing this, my eyes, which had been dim all along, finally lit up with brilliance. The right of inheritance, yes, I almost forgot. At this time, Grandma Terrence hasn't announced the heir yet. In my previous life, Wade secured the position of heir with my support. In this life, let's see how far you can go without my help. The next day, both families simultaneously announced that the Winston family's eldest daughter and the Terrence family's eldest son's wedding was cancelled. Immediately following was an even more shocking announcement. I am engaged to Virgil, originally set to marry Wade. I ended up marrying his uncle instead. Instantly, the entire city A was in an uproar. Wade was no exception, just as I expected. The moment he mentioned marrying Grandma Terrence to Phyllis, the old lady scolded him mercilessly. In the end, it was Grandpa Terrence who stepped in to mediate, saying they should wait until Phyllis gave birth before discussing her joining the family. However, Grandpa Terrence insisted that it had to be a boy for Phyllis to be accepted into the family. Terrence family made it blatantly clear they looked down on Phyllis, yet Phyllis, upon receiving this news, couldn't wait to flaunt it to me as if she'd been granted an imperial decree. Sister, oh sister, you never expected this, did you? In the end, it's me who gets the last laugh. Virgil, that sickly weakling, won't live much longer. Soon, the entire Terrence family will belong to Wade, and then I'll be the mistress of the house. I can't wait to see the day you'll grovel at my feet. Her eyes brimmed with twisted delight. This was also what puzzled me most in my past life. I looked directly at Phyllis and said word by word, Phyllis, I've treated you well. If I hadn't taken pity on her and brought her home back then, Phyllis would still be wandering outside. Later when I took her into my home, I believed I fulfilled my duty as an elder sister and never treated her harshly. Why does Phyllis hate me so much? Treated me well, ha ha ha. Margaret, stop being hypocritical. Phyllis let out a sharp, sinister laugh. Her face twisted with malice as she said, your kindness, taking me home, was nothing but scraps of charity. We are both our father's daughters, sharing the same blood. So why did you grow up in luxury while I was left to wander homeless? Why could you marry into a wealthy family, while I couldn't even step through the gates of the Terrence household? Margaret, you've been perched high for too long. It's time you tasted the bitterness of having nothing, just as I once did. Starting today, I will take everything that belongs to you. Hearing this, I remained silent for a long while, only to find it utterly laughable in the end. My initial goodwill had unwittingly nurtured a wolf in sheep's clothing. I've seen plenty of ungrateful wretches in my time, but you're the first to set such a standard. Fine, consider it my mistake for misjudging you. My sincere devotion fed to the dogs. But the one thing you should never have done is gamble with the entire Winston family just for your own sake. You had an affair with your brother-in-law. Do you have any idea how this will make Grandma and the Winston family look to outsiders? Phyllis burst into laughter as if hearing the most ridiculous joke, tears nearly streaming from her eyes. Grandma, the Winston family, what do they matter? The only thing that matters is my own happiness. Phyllis is utterly selfish, completely ignorant of the principle that a large family thrives or falls together. She only cares about her own pleasure, disregarding the survival of the entire family. Looking at that dark and twisted face, the resentment, despair, and pain from both past and present lives finally made me resolve. I am going to Phyllis take action. I clutched my chest, as if deeply wounded, and said, those who walk different paths cannot work together. You may leave. Phyllis gave a cold snort and turned to leave, seizing the moment before she walked too far. I deliberately said to Susan, has my jade Buddha statue arrived? That statue was something I knelt before the temple for 3 days and nights to obtain, and then had master craftsmen carve it to bear a slight resemblance to Grandma Terrence. The old lady will surely love it. My voice was neither too loud nor too soft, ensuring Phyllis would definitely hear it. Susan was naturally naive. Seeing me mention the gift in front of Phyllis, she quickly covered my mouth. Hey, she hasn't left yet. She was afraid Phyllis would copy my idea. I just smiled faintly. It was so naive. Copying my idea was nothing. Stealing my idea was what Phyllis excelled at. Sure enough, upon hearing my words, Phyllis paused her steps, a sly smirk curling at the corner of her lips as she walked away. See, she definitely heard it, Susan said urgently. I, however, smiled with absolute certainty and said mysteriously, is that so? But I wanted her to hear it. Phyllis believed her looks and intelligence were no less than mine, unaware that a mere outsider like her could never match the cunning of a young lady from a noble household. If I hadn't trusted her so much in my past life, she wouldn't have had the chance to harm me. Susan, help me fetch the Buddha statue. Seeing Phyllis completely gone, I walked to the table and lit the red candle. I let the red candle melt into wax, dripping into the Buddha statue's mouth and nose, then quickly wiped away the excess wax that overflowed with cotton cloth. Make this Buddha statue appear flawless from the outside. Margaret, what are you trying to do? Susan looked puzzled, seemingly unable to comprehend my thoughts. Nothing, just letting Phyllis head toward destruction. Early the next morning, Terrence's family hosted a banquet. I and Phyllis went to Terrence's house for the banquet. Susan exclaimed loudly beside me, "What, it's gone? How could such a large Buddha statue just disappear?" Pretending not to notice Phyllis's upturned lips. I lowered my head and said, "I don't know either, it was clearly on the table, let's look for it again." I and Susan searched frantically, while Phyllis looked excited to the point of being almost ferocious, tightly clutching the mulberry wood box in her hand. "Sister, oh sister, you truly are my good sister, once again, you're going to pave the way for me." Phyllis saw that I had won Grandma Terrence's favor and assumed the gift I prepared would surely delight the old lady. Last night, she secretly sneaked into my study and stole the Buddha statue. Little did she know that what won Grandma Terrence's affection wasn't the Buddha statue, but sincerity. Moreover, Grandma Terrence had long been dissatisfied with Phyllis because this woman had caused constant turmoil in the household. Did Phyllis think a random gift could make up for it? If I'm not mistaken, Grandma Terrence has already started considering changing the heir, hasn't she? As soon as she arrived at Terrence's house, Phyllis couldn't wait to say, "Grandma, I know you devoutly follow Buddhism, so I specially commissioned a Buddha statue to give you as a gift. I hope you won't disdain this small token of your granddaughter-in-law's affection." But Grandma Terrence completely ignored her and, smiling, reached out to me, saying, "Good child, come here, come quickly, sit beside me. I know you love that quail soup the most, so I had the kitchen prepare it for you last night." She pulled me to sit down, her kindness making her seem like my own grandmother. I stepped forward with a smile and said, "We must be thinking alike." The cravings in my stomach were just longing for this exact taste. Grandma Terrence couldn't help but laugh at my antics, from start to finish. Grandma Terrence only spoke to me, not acknowledging Phyllis at all. She even went as far as saying to Wade right in front of Phyllis, "Wade, you are the eldest young master of the Terrence family. Whether you inherit the Terrence family or not in the future, you will always be of noble status, not someone just any stray cat or dog can aspire to." Grandma Terrence, these words were no different from publicly slapping Phyllis in the face. I looked at Phyllis, and sure enough, her face had turned bright red. Wade said awkwardly, "Grandma, Phyllis isn't like what you said. Look, she knows you're devoted to Buddhism and specially prepared a Buddha statue as a gift for you. She put a lot of thought into it. Please, for the sake of the child in her belly, just take a look at her gift." I turned to Grandma Terrence, but she remained indifferent, treating Phyllis as if she were air. Phyllis clenched her teeth in hatred, yet still maintained a pitiful expression on her face. "Grandmother, I sincerely prepared a gift for you. Please give me a chance." "No need." Grandma Terrence tightened her aged lips. "I don't acknowledge you as my granddaughter-in-law. The Terrence family will never allow a woman who used such despicable means to rise to power through our doors." "Wade." Phyllis wept like a pear blossom bathed in rain, her face full of grievance. Wade also seemed troubled, if I guessed correctly. He must have been scolded heavily by Grandma Terrence these past few days, so he didn't dare speak up for Phyllis anymore. I curled my lips, watching the scene unfold with amusement. Phyllis seemed angry but quickly changed tactics, pitifully attempting to emotionally manipulate me. "Sister, didn't you say you've already forgiven me? If you have, please plead for Phyllis. Phyllis just wants to fulfill her filial duty to Grandma. Please grant her this wish." Hearing this, I felt utterly disgusted. "Want to fulfill your filial duties and beg me to help? Are you implying that if I don't help you, I'm preventing you from being filial to Grandma Terrence? You reap what you sow." "Phyllis, you did something disgusting yourself, and now you're dragging me into your mess when no one wants anything to do with you. Now that you know I'm your sister, why didn't you think of me as your sister when you climbed into Wade's bed?" As expected, whether in past lives or this one, Phyllis is always so disgusting. But this time, I'm determined to fulfill her wish. Pretending to be magnanimous, I said to Grandma Terrence, "Grandma Terrence, why don't you take a look? Maybe my sister really put her heart into preparing it." Phyllis was somewhat surprised that I pleaded for her so easily, but she had no time to dwell on it and immediately put on a pitiful act. "Yes, Grandma, I went through great effort to obtain this Buddha statue. I knelt outside the temple for 3 days and 3 nights. And my legs are all bruised. My devotion is evident to the Buddha." Hearing this, I found it even more ridiculous. "Kneeling outside the temple until your legs were bruised, you clearly stole it from my study." "Phyllis, you don't even bother drafting your lies before telling them." Grandma Terrence saw me pleading for Phyllis and, though visibly displeased, eventually relented. "Fine, for Margaret's sake, I'll grant you this favor. Present it." I moved to receive it, but Phyllis pushed past me, eagerly handing the statue directly to Grandma Terrence. "Grandmother, This is a token of my devotion as your granddaughter-in-law. Please accept." Before she could finish her words, Grandma Terence slapped Phyllis hard across the face the moment she saw the Buddha statue in the box, sending her crashing heavily to the ground. "Phyllis, you wretched woman, how dare you curse me?" Watching Phyllis's panicked expression, I slowly curled my lips into a smile, my eyes glinting with a cold light. The fish has taken the bait, and the show has finally begun. I sat beside Grandma Terence, coldly watching Phyllis, who had fallen to the ground. The gazes of those around were also fixed on that Buddha statue. The statue was carved from Hettian white jade, with a solemn and majestic appearance, exquisitely lifelike. What was even more astonishing was that the face of the Buddha bore a slight resemblance to Grandma Terence. If Phyllis had truly presented such a gift, Grandma Terence would have found it hard not to like it. What infuriated Grandma Terence was that as soon as the box was opened, the Buddha statue began bleeding from all 7 orifices. What did Phyllis mean by giving her this Buddha statue that bled from all 7 orifices? Grandma Terence immediately assumed that Phyllis resented her for not allowing her to join the family and was thus cursing her. I watched this scene with a calm expression, but a surge of vengeful satisfaction welled up inside me. This round is won. Phyllis has no chance left to win Grandma Terence's favor. From the very beginning, I deliberately let Phyllis overhear that I had prepared a Buddha statue, luring her into the trap, and then filled the statue's mouth and nose with red candle wax. Moreover, drawing from my past life's knowledge, I knew Grandma Terence feared the cold, so the indoor temperature would be much higher than outside. That's why Phyllis couldn't detect any issues with the statue from the outside. Only upon arriving at Terence's house would the red wax in the Buddha statue's mouth and nose melt and flow out. This round tests not only my wits but also my understanding of Grandma Terence and Phyllis. "You vile woman, are you deliberately cursing me, knowing I worship Buddha, yet you bring a statue bleeding from all orifices to disgust me?" Wade, this is the fine woman you found. For this wretch, you'd even neglect your own grandmother. Grandma Terence now not only despises Phyllis but has also dragged Wade into it. Phyllis shook her head frantically. "No, it's not, Grandma. She framed me. Grandma, this Buddha statue was Margaret's doing. She set me up then." With eyes bloodshot, she rushed forward to strangle me. "Margaret, you vile woman, I wondered why you brought up the Buddha statue in front of me yesterday. You're trying to ruin me. How dare you?" Just as her hands were about to close around my neck, a pair of slender, well-defined hands appeared before my eyes. "Miss Phyllis, it seems rather inappropriate for you to harm my fiancé in my own home, don't you think?" The man's voice was as refreshing and melodious as a mountain spring. I looked up and saw it was Virgil. To be fair, Virgil possessed exceptionally handsome features. His handsome face, with its well-defined angles, exudes masculine charm in every line, while his starry eyes reveal kindness and warmth. Only because of Wade's slow-acting poison, his lips were slightly pale. Virgil grabbed Phyllis's wrist, smiling on the surface, but his grip was far from gentle, twisting her face in pain. "Miss Phyllis, you'd better learn to control your hands and stop hurting people recklessly." With that, he released his grip. Phyllis fell to the ground with a scream. I stared at him in shock as my vision blurred before me. Scenes from past and present lives overlap. Virgil seems to appear just in time to save me from peril every time, but I only panicked for a brief moment before regaining my composure. The show must go on. "Phyllis, you know how to play the victim, but do you think I can't do the same?" With reddened eyes, I said to Phyllis, "Sister, what are you talking about? This Buddha statue was clearly the gift you prepared for Grandma Terence. Just moments ago, you were saying how you knelt in front of the temple for 3 days and nights until your knees were bruised to obtain this gift. How could it suddenly become mine? Grandma Terence, I'm truly at a loss to defend myself. Please be my judge." With that, I took out a handkerchief to wipe my tears. Grandma Terence grew even more furious upon hearing this. "Phyllis, you wretched creature, clearly, it was you who wished to curse me, and now you dare to falsely accuse your sister. Someone, throw her out. I never want to see her again." Phyllis panicked instantly and hurriedly pleaded. "No, Grandma, I was truly framed by her. I only thought the Buddha statue was beautiful and wanted to offer it as a tribute. It was Margaret who deliberately used a statue with blood streaming from its orifices. She's the one who intended to curse you. Is that so?" Just as I was about to retort, Virgil suddenly grasped my cold hand beside me. He gave me a look, signaling that I needn't worry. Then Virgil pointed at the Phyllis' mulberry wood box and said, "So, you stole this Buddha statue from my fiancé." Phyllis, though reluctant to admit to theft, had no choice but to say for the sake of her innocence. I just thought it looked nice at the moment, so I wanted to. Taking without asking is theft, so all that talk about devout prayers and bruised knees was just lies to deceive everyone. Virgil stared directly into Phyllis's eyes, his gaze sharp and unyielding. Phyllis's face flushed crimson, her eyes reddening as she looked up pitifully, desperately seeking help from Wade. Wade had no choice but to brace himself and say to Virgil, "Uncle, Phyllis nephew. I know you like Phyllis, but one must always have principles and a sense of shame," Virgil interrupted coldly. "I saw Wade get Virgil here, and I couldn't help but applaud Virgil in my heart." "Well said," Virgil continued to say to Phyllis. "Phyllis, you thought you could shift the blame onto Margaret, but you didn't realize you've already exposed the truth." "What?" Phyllis bit her lower lip, the resentment in her eyes barely concealed. "Uncle, you can't just side with Margaret because she's your fiancée. I won't accept this." "You don't accept this? Fine." Virgil pointed at the mulberry wood box and said, "Look at the box in her hand. Margaret is deeply devoted to Buddhist teachings. If she were preparing a Buddha statue, she would definitely use sandalwood for the container. Yet, Phyllis is holding a mulberry wood box. Mulberry wood, also known as soul-summoning wood, is the most disliked in Buddhism. Therefore, this Buddha statue must have been prepared by someone who knows nothing about Buddhist principles." I immediately turned to Grandma Terence and said, "Grandma, all the gifts I've given you in the past were packaged in sandalwood boxes. If you don't believe me, you can send someone to check. Mulberry wood is considered inauspicious, and I would absolutely never use it for a gift box." Virgil took the lead. I provided backup, and our seamless teamwork instantly Phyllis to the pillar of shame. "Bastard!" Grandma Terence was so furious that she immediately threw the teacup in her hand hard at Phyllis. Wade was also splashed with hot water. Because of this incident, Grandma Terence disliked Phyllis even more, and her attitude toward Wade, her own grandson, also worsened significantly. My knowledge from 2 lifetimes told me Phyllis would definitely come to steal this Buddha statue, but I never expected Virgil to help me with such a big favor upon our first meeting. My heart was filled with mixed emotions, and the thought of him being poisoned in his previous life only deepened the sorrow. I must do something to stop all this. "Grandma Terence, I need to talk to Virgil." Grandma Terence was taken aback for a moment, then held my hand with an even more benevolent smile. "I was worried you might get stuck in your own thoughts." Good, very good. It's wonderful that you're willing to bond with Virgil." "Virgil, your fiancé wants to chat with you. Hurry over," she playfully urged Virgil. Grandma Terence was extremely satisfied with me as her daughter-in-law, which is why Wade's scandal made her so furious. Now that she sees I'm willing to engage with Virgil, she's naturally overjoyed. Anyway, Grandma Terence had made up her mind to welcome me through the Terence family's front door. Phyllis was so enraged upon hearing this that she nearly gritted her teeth to pieces. Why does everyone like Margaret, that wretched woman? What kind of bewitching potion did she give everyone?" "Grandma, I'm innocent. It was my sister who framed me." Phyllis continued to protest her innocence, but no one paid her any attention anymore. Virgil led me to the small garden at the back, behaving with gentlemanly courtesy, his gaze as warm as in our past life. "Watch your step. Though the garden is lovely, the ground is uneven in places. Next time you visit, I'll make sure the gardener levels it properly." I gazed into his obsidian dark eyes, no longer hearing a sound, my heart filled with memories of him feeding me porridge in a past life. Initially, I had planned to hint subtly and advise Virgil against drinking that morning tea, but now I've decided to tell him the truth directly. "Do you drink a cup of Junshan silver needle tea every morning?" Virgil seemed surprised by my train of thought but still followed my words. "That's true, but it's my personal habit." "How did you know?" "Junshan silver needle tea clears the stomach and strengthens the spleen, so he had the habit of drinking this tea every morning." My heart was filled with sorrow. Of course I knew. In my past life, Virgil was killed by the slow-acting poison in this tea. It's just a pity I realized it too late. By then, Virgil was already beyond saving. In this second life, I will never let the tragedy repeat itself. I grabbed Virgil's arm and said with utmost seriousness, "Stop drinking. Someone has put something in the tea." Virgil was stunned for a moment, then shook his head and mocked himself. "Margaret, with this body of mine, why would anyone bother to harm me? What if I told you it was because you drank that tea that your health deteriorated?" I looked directly into Virgil's eyes and said word by word, "Virgil, think carefully. Did your health issues start after drinking that tea?" Recalling my past life, Virgil was actually Grandma Terence's originally intended heir, but later, as his health deteriorated, Wade ended up taking advantage of the situation. At these words, Virgil seemed to fall into recollection. His brows furrowed, His gaze gradually grew intense, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. It was Wade. Often, the beneficiaries are the perpetrators. His body is truly broken, and the first beneficiary in the Terrence family would be Wade. I nodded. Talking with smart people is always efficient. Thank you for telling me this, otherwise, I wouldn't have noticed my nephew's sinister ambitions. But daring to share this with me on our first meeting, aren't you afraid of overstepping boundaries? Virgil's gaze at me was filled with intense interest. I smiled, a faint glow finally appearing on my pale cheeks. Didn't you help me put on a grand show when we first met, if I'm not mistaken? Virgil knew from the very beginning that this was a trap I had set, yet not only did he not expose me, he even helped me perform this grand show well. This proves he is still the same kind-hearted person as in his previous life. Such a good person should not meet a tragic end. I looked at Virgil and said firmly, moreover, I believe some people remain strangers even after years, while others become close friends at first sight. When leaving Terrence's house, Virgil personally drove me back. Phyllis had been holding it in the whole way. She suddenly slapped the maid beside her and demanded, Wade, why didn't he come to see me off? The maid covered her face and trembled as she replied, Miss, Wade has been detained at home by Grandma Terrence. She said she wants to arrange another marriage for him. Phyllis trembled with rage upon hearing this. Her face twisted in fury as she spat. What, another marriage? I just got rid of one Margaret. And now someone else is trying to steal the position of Terrence family's matriarch from me. No way, no one can take my place, no one. Her eyes darted around as she deliberately squeezed out a few pitiful tears, clutching her stomach. She collapsed in front of the Terrence family's main gate. Wade, after returning home, my grandmother cheerfully said to me, Margaret, your wedding with Virgil is approaching. Grandma Terrence has ordered many wedding dresses from abroad. Come and pick some out. You, the bride-to-be, should start preparing early. Who knows what kind of spell Phyllis cast on Wade, but despite her causing such a huge mess, Wade remains devoted to her and even convinced Grandma Terrence to let her into the family. These past few days, Phyllis has been so smug she could practically float. She feels she married above me and always tries to put me down. Grandma, let me pick the wedding dress first. Wade is about to become the heir of the Terrence family, so the wedding must be perfect. As for my sister, she's just marrying a sickly man. She can have whatever dress I don't want, even though we're both marrying into the Terrence family. There's still a clear difference in status. With that, she looked at me smugly. Margaret, what if you harmed me? What if Grandma Terrence doesn't like me? As long as I can capture Wade's heart, I'll still be the mistress of the Terrence family. And you'll still be trampled under my feet. My grandmother immediately retorted coldly, you stole your sister's fiancé, then had the audacity to get pregnant before marriage, and now you have the nerve to pick a wedding dress first. Aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock? Phyllis, who was already fuming in the Terrence household, immediately teared up upon hearing my grandmother's words. Grandma, Wade and I are truly in love. How can that be called stealing? Besides, Margaret also framed me with that bloodied Buddha statue. Why are you only taking her side? She's your granddaughter. But am I not one too? My grandmother said coldly, if possible, I really don't want to acknowledge you as my granddaughter. And you say Margaret framed you. Fine, even if the Buddha statue was indeed prepared by your sister, if you hadn't stolen it, could she have forced it into your hands? You claim you were framed. But unless you harbored selfish motives and evil intentions, who could have made you commit such a brazen act of deception? Now you still have the nerve to make excuses before me. Phyllis was seething with anger when Grandma Terrence's wedding expert and the Terrence family's butler arrived at the door. The butler smiled at me and said, Miss, these wedding dresses were all specially prepared for you by Grandma Terrence. Please make your selection. Phyllis couldn't help but exclaim anxiously. Why does she get to choose first? I'm the future Terrence family matriarch. The butler said coldly, Miss Phyllis, your child hasn't been born yet. Who knows if it'll be a boy or girl? Besides, how could you wear a wedding dress with that belly? Do you want the whole city to laugh at the Terrence family? But Wade promised me the grandest wedding, Phyllis began to say. The butler cut her off directly. I'm sorry, Miss Phyllis. But the Terrence family is entirely under the matriarch's control. Even the eldest young master must obey her. What's more, the matriarch has already arranged a new political marriage for him. If the child in your belly isn't a boy, who knows who the future Terrence family matriarch will be? Someone come, take Miss Phyllis away to rest for her pregnancy. Don't let her wander around unnecessarily. If she's not ashamed of her big belly, our Terrence family certainly is. As soon as he finished speaking, several servants immediately stepped forward and roughly escorted Phyllis out. Watching Phyllis struggle with the servants, I sneered inwardly. Those who lack self-respect will never earn the respect of others. Grandpa Terence had declared that Phyllis could enter the Terence family if she gave birth to a boy, but the Terence family no longer held any respect for her, the kind of despair I felt in my past life. Phyllis is now experiencing it herself. Phyllis, feeling wronged, immediately went to Wade to play the victim. Wade was also thoughtless enough to publicly threaten Grandma Terence, saying that if the Terence family continued to trouble Phyllis, he would rebel against the family. Furious, Grandma Terence slapped him twice in public. Grandma Terence was no ordinary woman. She could clearly see that Wade had been instigated by Phyllis. I heard Grandma Terence was absolutely livid that day and even declared that if Wade caused any more trouble, Phyllis would never set foot inside the Terence family's door again. Phyllis was thoroughly frightened into behaving after hearing this. Grandma Terence detested Phyllis and wasted no time in finding a new marriage prospect for Wade, arranging for everyone to meet the candidate on Sunday. As the future daughter-in-law of the Terence family, I was naturally included in the invitation. Grandma Terence had chosen Stanford family's eldest daughter from City A, Nicola, who was not only strikingly beautiful but also had a bold, tomboyish personality. If it weren't for the Stanford family's patriarch being gravely ill and wishing to see Nicola married before his passing, Wade would truly be unworthy of Nicola. But I had barely sat down when something utterly jaw-dropping happened. Wade actually brought Phyllis along with him. Moreover, Phyllis was dressed even more dazzlingly than today's leading lady, Nicola. She clung tightly to Wade's arm, her eyes brimming with triumph. Wade actually brought Phyllis to assert his ownership at his own blind date. At this moment, not only was everyone stunned, but I was also dumbfounded. They say love can make people blind, and today I finally believe it. Wade, this is throwing away all reason for the sake of love. He so brazenly brought Phyllis here, not only slapping Grandma Terence in the face but also humiliating the entire Stanford family. Sure enough, when I looked up, the Stanford couple's faces had turned ashen. They pointed at Phyllis and said, "Grandma Terence, we sincerely wanted to join families with you. What is the meaning of this?" Grandma Terence hurried forward to placate them. "It's not what you think," but before she could finish her words, Wade stiffened his neck and declared with deep affection to Phyllis, "Just as you all see, Phyllis is the love of my life. I will never marry anyone else but her." Before he could finish his words, Grandma Terence slapped him to the ground. "You disgrace." Phyllis immediately burst into tears and pretended to shield Wade, saying, "Grandma, please don't hit Wade anymore. He didn't mean it. He did all this for me and the baby in my belly. That's why." I watched as Phyllis acted theatrically, touching her stomach. Sure enough, the next moment, the Stanford family's expressions grew even more unpleasant. Wade remained completely oblivious to Phyllis's masterful acting, instead saying with a pained expression, "Phyllis, it's all my fault for not letting you marry into the Terence family sooner. But rest assured, you're the only one in my heart." The Stanford family couple seemed utterly disgusted. Grandma Terence was also trembling with anger. "Wade, are you truly determined to oppose me and marry that low-born wench into our family?" Wade responded with solemnity, "Grandmother, what defines lowborn? By birth, Phyllis is also of the Winston family, and the Winstons are an aristocratic lineage." My grandmother immediately retorted, "Young Master Wade, choose your words carefully. Our Winston family cannot tolerate such shameless trash." From the moment she seduced her brother-in-law and conceived that bastard child, I struck her name from the family registry. Her words made it abundantly clear, Wade could be with Phyllis, but he shouldn't expect even a shred of support from the Winston family. The Winston family only acknowledges me as their daughter. At this matchmaking banquet, Wade not only offended Grandma Terence and the Stanford family, but also managed to anger our Winston family. His once rock-solid position as heir has now begun to waver. The company's shareholders who support Wade are practically jumping with anxiety. They're forcing Wade to attend matchmaking events, threatening to remove him from his position otherwise. Wade initially wanted to put on airs, but upon learning the importance of the matter, he began attending blind dates day after day. Today he met the daughter of one family, tomorrow the young lady of another. Each one was a wealthy heiress with substantial assets. Wade thought he could secure the heir's position all by himself. Joke. Why bother with arranged marriages among noble families then? They might as well all marry poor girls. In aristocratic families, marriage itself is a business. The Stanford family had barely finished their matchmaking banquet when Wade became so busy he was running around like a headless chicken, meeting young ladies every day and no longer had time to pay attention to Phyllis. Wade has been running around, barely maintaining the glamour of being the heir, as if everything were normal. but I know his position as heir won't last much longer. Grandma Terrence's dissatisfaction with Wade is about to explode. I have to admit, my sister really has some tricks up her sleeve. Crying one day, making a scene the next, she had Wade's heart completely in her grasp. Although Wade was constantly socializing outside, he would return every night to their little home to accompany Phyllis. It's said that Wade even neglected Grandma Terrence's birthday banquet for Phyllis, to buy luxury goods for Phyllis. He even sold off his shares and did countless outrageous things. Wade is taking advantage of being the only eldest grandson in the Terrence family, openly slapping Grandma Terrence in the face. Phyllis, spoiled to the point of losing her senses, actually boasted in the high society ladies' circle of City A. Wade said that although he can't welcome me into the family immediately, once I give birth to a child, he will definitely marry me in a grand ceremony and hand over the Terrence family's household management rights to me. He's just pretending with those other women outside, only with me is it real. Upon hearing this, the potential marriage candidates who were still on the fence no longer believed Wade's nonsense. Above the surface, Wade remains the heir of the Terrence family, thriving in prosperity and smooth sailing. Beneath the surface, he has already lost all support and finds himself isolated and surrounded by enemies. And I know that Virgil hasn't been idle during this time. He set up a shell company overseas and has been gradually acquiring Wade's shares, even buying out several key properties Wade held in his hands, all to ensure a swift and decisive resolution when the time comes to seize power. I used to only know Virgil as gentle, but never expected his business tactics to be so shrewd, which left me quite astonished. It seems there are still many things from my past life that I didn't know. Virgil, seeing me sitting silently beside him with no words, took my cold hand, thinking he had frightened me. Margaret, do you think my methods are too ruthless? I shook my head, looking at his face that was almost identical to his past life, and smiled as I returned his grasp. No, never, because you are my savior. More importantly, in my past life, what cruel methods haven't I seen? What terrifying tortures haven't I endured? Now I only regret that what was inflicted upon Wade was too little. Virgil was shocked by the intense hatred flashing in my eyes. Phyllis wondered why such a carefree young girl could harbor such strong hatred in her heart. What exactly had she been through? Wade was so immersed in his life of luxury every day that he failed to notice his influence being gradually eroded. When Virgil acquired his final 10% of shares, our wedding date finally arrived. Nicola may not have married into the Terrence family, but fate somehow made us close friends. Of course she had to attend my wedding day. Gazing at the beautiful woman in the wedding dress reflected in the mirror, Nicola couldn't help but sigh. Margaret, you're truly blessed. Heaven knew that Wade was unworthy of marriage, so it orchestrated that incident with your sister to spare you from this disaster. As for me, I'm not as lucky. I failed to catch the fox and ended up with nothing but a stench. Hearing Nicola's words, I immediately understood the source of her distress. Ever since she caught the eye of Grandma Terrence, Phyllis has been guarding against her fiercely. Even though Nicola had no interest in Wade, Phyllis still clung to her suspicions relentlessly. Phyllis has always been unhinged. Her willingness to leap to her death in her past life just to make me suffer speaks volumes. So Nicola must have been having an extremely unpleasant time lately. Today's wedding banquet, Phyllis is definitely coming. It's so annoying. Margaret, do you have any way to deal with her? I laughed and said, do you really want to deal with her? Of course. You have no idea how she's been treating me lately. She actually spread rumors in high society circles saying I'm promiscuous. Isn't that hateful? Nicola, at this thought, she gritted her teeth in hatred. A woman who'd sleep with anyone. My expression darkened gradually. I had considered Phyllis might cause trouble for Nicola, but never imagined she would spread such malicious rumors about Nicola. Only women truly understand the destructive power of salacious rumors. A single sentence can ruin a person's life. This sister of mine is so vicious. She never fails to surpass my expectations. Originally, I didn't want to take action against Phyllis at my wedding, but now it seems the plans Virgil and I made will have to be moved up. I stared at Nicola and said, Nicola, dealing with Phyllis is simple, just 2 words, overpraise and destroy. Nicola paused in surprise and said, you mean, only when a person is at their most triumphant do they most easily reveal flaws, and once flaws are exposed, that person is no longer invincible. Do you understand? I said to her. Nicola caught on immediately, rubbing her hands together eagerly. Got it, got it. Today I'll lift her up to the heavens, at my wedding. Under Nicola's lead, a group of young ladies from noble families showered Phyllis with flattery. Some envied Phyllis for her imminent marriage into a prestigious family. Others claimed Phyllis had men wrapped around her finger. And some even begged Phyllis to teach them the art of controlling their husbands. Nicola even went so far as to propose a toast to Phyllis, seemingly bowing to her for the first time. Phyllis had never received so much attention before. She drank one cup after another. And before long, her face was flushed with drunkenness. I saw Phyllis drunk out of her mind, deliberately drawing over the big shots from the business district, people who had long despised Phyllis for her frivolous and arrogant demeanor. I stepped forward to toast Phyllis, the massive diamond ring on my hand dazzling Phyllis to the point of pain. All of this proved that I had still married into a wealthy family before her. Phyllis already hated me to the core, and now, egged on by the crowd, she lost her senses and violently knocked over my wine glass. Margaret, your days of gloating won't last much longer. Once I marry into the Terrence family, I'll be the mistress of the house. You and your sickly husband will have to live at my mercy. And even that old hag Grandma Terrence will have to follow my lead. When I tell you to kneel, you won't dare stand. If she hadn't been drunk, Phyllis would never have uttered such outrageous words, but today, dead drunk, she blurted out all her true thoughts. The surrounding business tycoon's expressions changed abruptly. Phyllis had already disgraced herself by stealing her sister's fiancé, but now she was pushing her luck, even daring to think of climbing over Grandma Terrence's head. I know that Phyllis's words today will definitely reach Grandma Terrence's ears. The death knell has officially tolled. After completing the task, I returned to my room exhausted, knowing that Virgil was still being plied with alcohol, so I decided to take a short nap first. Just as I closed my eyes, the room door was opened. I was startled and was about to turn on the light when I heard a familiar, gentle voice. It's me. Then, a pair of warm hands grasped mine. Perhaps due to my constitution, my hands are always as cold as ice. Virgil has recently developed a habit of warming them for me. Why are you back so early? Didn't they want to take you out for drinks? Being intimate with a man again, my body stiffened slightly. Virgil chuckled softly. How could drinking compare to being with my wife? Besides, who would be so tactless as to actually get the groom drunk on his wedding day? He seemed to sense my nervousness and used a half-joking tone to ease my defenses. The failed marriage in my past life left me with deep shadows about men, and I once thought I would remain alone after taking my revenge, but Virgil suddenly barged into my life. Perhaps it was because of my grandmother's advice, or perhaps because of that bowl of warm porridge in my past life, but I always had a different feeling towards Virgil. All these days, I couldn't quite figure out what that feeling was, but now, looking at his eyes that still shine brightly in the dim room, I think I understand now. It's a sense of security. As long as he's here, I never have to be afraid. Virgil, if one day you discover that I'm not as kind as you imagined, that I can also scheme against others, would you still love me like this? I stubbornly looked at Virgil. Silly. Virgil pulled me into his embrace, planting tender kisses by my ear. In this world, who doesn't scheme against others, and who isn't schemed against? And I believe you're not the kind of person who would harm others without reason. Anyway, don't be afraid. I'll always stand by your side. Always stand by your side. Tears streamed down my face. What I had begged for my entire previous life but never obtained, I had somehow stumbled upon in this lifetime. I gaze at Virgil's face, still sharply defined in the darkness of night. Perhaps heaven has not been unkind to me. Half a month after Virgil and I got married, Virgil's complexion grew increasingly better. Grandma Terrence also began putting the matter of replacing the heir on the agenda. At the shareholders' meeting, she used the pretext that Wade had treacherous people around him, intending to harm the Terrence family, to demand the removal of his heir position. However, Wade was after all the designated heir for many years, with deep-rooted influence, and still had considerable shareholder support. Thus, Grandma Terrence failed to successfully replace him this time. Wade finally realized at this point that the old lady detested Phyllis so deeply that she couldn't even stand the sight of him anymore. In order to secure his position as heir, he stopped visiting Phyllis every day and instead stayed home to accompany Grandma Terrence. However, Grandma Terrence had fallen ill for several days due to Phyllis's foolish remarks at my wedding, and her health was no longer as robust as before. The Terrence family's recent cross-border business deal was something she lacked the energy to handle personally, so she entrusted it to Wade, who would have thought Wade hadn't even boarded the plane yet when Phyllis started crying and fussing, claiming she felt unwell and insisting he return. Wade actually left the important client hanging and rushed back in a panic. The shareholders who supported him were furious and desperately tried to stop him. After all, this deal was the Terrence family's most significant collaboration in recent years, and the Terrence family was counting on it to turn their fortunes around. but Wade ignored all and insisted on going back, even punching and injuring one of his most loyal shareholders. Other shareholders witnessing this scene also felt the peril of mutual destruction. Wade ruined a billion-dollar collaboration with Terrence's family for a woman, and even injured his most loyal supporter. What can a man controlled by a woman possibly achieve? Phyllis not only clamored to see Wade but also threatened to commit suicide unless she met me. I knew immediately that this was a setup, but seeing her in such a desperate state, I still went over. However, to avoid any mishaps, I brought another person along, Nicola. I walked into the hospital room while she stood outside recording with her phone. "Did you call me?" I looked at Phyllis lying on the hospital bed, my eyes revealing a mix of wariness and disgust. "Sister, it's been so long since we've talked. Why are you standing so far away? Are you afraid your little sister might harm you?" Phyllis had an extremely pale face, but her eyes were frighteningly dark. "I've long seen through this person. If you have nothing to do, I'm very busy." Phyllis snarled from behind. "Margaret, why are you so lucky? Your background, your looks, even your sickly husband's health has improved. And now you're trying to steal the position of heir to the Terrence family. Let me tell you, don't even think about it." With that, she seemed to make up her mind, stood up abruptly, and slammed herself into the corner of the table. Instantly, Phyllis's hospital gown was drenched in blood, but a twisted smile appeared on her face. "Ha ha ha ha, Phyllis, you're done for. You killed my child. When Wade returns, he'll never let you off the hook, and neither will Grandma Terrence. Let's see how you'll manage to stay in the Terrence family then. I am the true matriarch of the Terrence family, the one and only matriarch of the Terrence family." Watching Phyllis in this frenzied state sent chills down my spine. She's truly a madwoman, willing to kill her own child just to frame me. "Phyllis, that's your child, your baby about to be born." I stared at the large pool of blood beneath her and scolded sharply. In my past life, I watched as my own child was Wade strangled to death, enduring unbearable heartbreak, yet Phyllis used her own child as a bargaining chip to drag me down. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't harm its own cub, huh? "So what?" Phyllis said maliciously. "I might as well tell you, the baby in my belly was never Wade's child. I was already 2 months pregnant before I even got together with him. If this child is born, the truth will surely come out, so I'm taking this opportunity to get rid of you." Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, isn't it? I stared in shock at Phyllis, a piece of information I had never known in this life or the last. No wonder Phyllis had jumped to her death so resolutely in the past life. The child in her belly wasn't Wade's at all. "So, when you said you were pregnant with Wade's child back then," Phyllis sneered, "Wade is just a rebound guy I found. If he weren't the eldest son of the Terrence family, would I even look at him? Of course. The more important thing is, I just want to take your place. I just want to marry into a wealthy family. I just want to trample you, Margaret, under my feet. Do you hate me now? Ha ha ha." "Margaret, if you have the guts, go complain to Wade. Tell him I just used him as a rebound, that I've cheated on him countless times. Let's see if he believes you or me." "My dear sister, my sweet sister, don't even think about struggling. This blame is yours to bear." Before she could finish her words, hurried footsteps echoed through the hospital corridor. "Phyllis, Phyllis." Phyllis heard Wade's voice and gave me a twisted smile before instantly putting on the pitiful look of a delicate white flower. "Ugh, Wade, I'm in so much pain. I'm sorry. I couldn't protect our child." Wade entered the hospital room and saw Phyllis covered in blood, collapsed on the floor, with me standing right in front of her. "Phyllis." Wade looked at Phyllis's fragile and pitiful state and instantly went mad. He grabbed my throat, his eyes bloodshot, and snarled, "Margaret, you wretched woman, what have you done to Phyllis? If anything happens to her or the child, I'll send you straight to hell." Wade's frenzied appearance left no doubt about the truth of his words. It seemed he could strangle me to death at any moment. Phyllis revealed a sinister smile at the corner of her mouth, but quickly feigned kindness, saying, "Ahem, Wade, don't. Even if my sister is unkind, I cannot be unjust. Though she killed my child, she is still my own sister after all. Woo-woo, my child, my poor child." Her wailing was heart-wrenching, and her words only poured fuel on the fire. Wade tightened his grip even more, his large hands like iron clamps, leaving me almost unable to breathe. I desperately clutched Wade's hands, suddenly broke free, and slapped him hard across the face. "Enough, Wade, you're just a fool being played like a puppet." Wade was slapped, which only fueled his rage further. Ignoring him, I turned to Phyllis and said word by word, "Phyllis, do you think I'd still be as foolish as before, letting you frame me?" Phyllis's already pale face turned as white as paper. "What do you mean? Nicola, shouldn't you show yourself now?" I looked towards the outside of the hospital room. Immediately after, Nicola walked in with a cold smile under Phyllis's horrified gaze. Phyllis had previously spread rumors about her, saying she was promiscuous. Today, the boomerang finally came back to hit Phyllis herself. Nicola raised her phone and said to Wade, "Wade, watch carefully and see what kind of person your beloved innocent flower really is." Soon, she pressed the video play button. Every word Phyllis said to me was clearly recorded in the phone. "No, don't listen, Wade, they framed me. This video is fabricated by them." Phyllis let out a scream and immediately tried to snatch the phone. Unfortunately, having just accidentally knocked over the child herself, she was extremely weak and stood no chance against Nicola. Soon, the entire video finished playing. Wade stood frozen in place when he heard that the child wasn't his. Phyllis had just been using him as a backup plan. Wade's eyes turned murderous. The woman he had fought so desperately to marry, the woman for whom he was willing to stand against the whole world, she turned out to be this kind of person, disloyal, deceitful, and utterly shameless. Phyllis shuddered violently, shaking her head in panic. "No, it's not like that, Wade, let me explain. It was all my sister's doing. She set me up. The evidence is right here in the video, and you still dare to lie to me." Wade roared in fury, betrayed and deceived. His rage erupted as he suddenly slapped Phyllis hard across the face. He put all his strength into that slap, sending Phyllis flying several meters away. Phyllis's face instantly bore 5 red, swollen palm marks, and several of her teeth were knocked out. But misfortunes never come singly. As another piece of bad news soon reached Wade, it turned out that Grandma Terrence had learned Wade ruined Terrence's family's $100 million deal for Phyllis, and directly called to revoke his heir status. At this moment, Wade was filled with despair. It's over, everything is over. Not only did he lose the woman he loved most, but he also lost his position as the heir. Phyllis went mad upon hearing this, shouting, "What? Wade is no longer the heir. What about my position as the lady of the house? What about my position as the lady of the house?" She suddenly turned to me, glaring viciously. "It's you, Margaret, it's you again. Do you think by harming me, by harming Wade, you can take over the Terrence family? Let me tell you, you're dreaming. You are a member of the Winston family, and so am I. As a family, we rise and fall together. If I lose face, don't think you'll get away unscathed." Wade couldn't take it anymore and began stomping wildly on her stomach. Phyllis, who had just suffered a miscarriage, was in excruciating pain from the kicks, and beads of cold sweat immediately rolled down her face. "You bitch. How dare you falsely accuse others at a time like this?" Wade looked deranged as he grabbed my shoulders and said, "Margaret, you still love me, don't you? You did all this to prove you still care about me, right? As long as you help me secure the heir's position, I'll definitely marry you. Let's go back to how things were before, okay?" His frenzied expression was almost identical to Phyllis's. I abruptly broke free from him and said, "Wade, how dare you? From the moment you cheated on me with Phyllis, there hasn't been any love left between us, and besides, I'm your uncle's wife. By rights, you should call me aunt." My words were like a flame. Wade instantly erupted in fury. The former Margaret was wholeheartedly devoted to him. Her eyes filled only with him, yet in such a short time, she had already cast him aside. Wade had grown accustomed to me following behind him, but one day, when he realized this woman no longer had him in her eyes, he first felt anger, then began to panic. "Margaret, didn't you like me the most? You've only been married to Virgil for a few days and already call yourself my aunt. Was your affection always so cheap?" Hearing this, I found it even more laughable. Wade said my feelings are cheap. After we got engaged, he cheated on me with my own sister and humiliated me countless times, yet now he still expects me to treat him the same as before. Is he dreaming? I couldn't be bothered with this pair of lunatics and turned to leave. Wade shouted hysterically behind me with resentment, "Margaret, do you really look down on me that much? Do you think I'll definitely lose to Virgil? Just wait and see." I paused in my steps but still didn't turn back. Grandma Terrence had announced Virgil as the new heir, but whenever I recalled Wade's frantic and unwilling expression that day, I still felt a chill run down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that Wade would stir up trouble again. Virgil always comforts me over and over again, but a woman's sixth sense is terrifyingly accurate. Wade disappeared for over half a month before reappearing in the Terrence family estate. Surprisingly, Phyllis, who had already fallen out with him, was still by his side. Grandma Terrence thought Wade had come for the heir position and immediately said coldly, "There's no need for you to beg me anymore. In 3 days, I'll hand the heir position to your uncle." For this wretched woman, you even disregarded a contract worth hundreds of millions. I no longer need a grandson like you. Whether it's fortune or misfortune in the future, you'll bear it yourself. she was completely disappointed in Wade. If the previous broken engagement could be attributed to Wade's youthful ignorance, then abandoning billions in company business for a woman, how could someone like this possibly qualify as the Terrence family's heir? I watched this scene coldly. But then something astonishing happened. Wade didn't mention reinstatement again. Instead, he knelt by Grandma Terrence's bedside, deeply repenting for his mistakes. Grandma, I know I was wrong. It was all a moment of foolishness back then. And I'll never do it again. I only beg to stay by your side with Phyllis, serving and caring for you. Please give us this chance. Grandma Terrence was visibly moved upon hearing this. Wade continued kneeling by Grandma Terrence's bedside, wailing, Grandma, I don't want anything anymore, not the heir position, not the billions. I just beg you to acknowledge me as your grandson. I'd even be willing to die right here if that's what it takes. Phyllis knelt beside him silently wiping tears. Her face deathly pale from the recent miscarriage, looking like a helpless little white flower in the storm. Grandma, all the mistakes from before were entirely Phyllis's fault. I beg you not to blame Wade. I've lost my child, please, considering the lesson I've already learned, let us stay. Phyllis wept pitifully, her tears like pear blossoms glistening with rain, evoking sympathy. I furrowed my brows, my gaze sweeping over the two of them. As the ominous feeling in my heart grew stronger, Wade knew full well that Phyllis's child wasn't his, so why was he still willing to bring Phyllis into the Terrence family? Could his feelings for Phyllis be so deep that he'd willingly wear her infidelity like a green hat? But if his love were truly that profound, he wouldn't have violently kicked Phyllis that day, even with my rebirth. This is the first time I can't comprehend what these two are thinking. Grandma Terrence softened after all, blood being thicker than water, especially since Wade had already relinquished his position as heir. Grandma Terrence ultimately chose to let them stay. Something felt off to me. And an inexplicable unease welled up in my heart, so I told Virgil to stay on guard against these two. Yet despite all precautions, the unexpected still occurred. On the third day, just as Virgil was about to succeed as the heir, a heart-wrenching scream from Phyllis echoed through our new home. Today is Virgil's day to take over as heir, and many relatives, friends, and shareholders have come to the house. When I heard the scream and rushed to the new room, Virgil's hands and arms were drenched in red wine. Phyllis's dress buttons had all popped open. Clutching her bare chest, she wailed, Assault, Uncle, how could you do this to me? I'm your niece-in-law. Phyllis's outburst left the relatives and shareholders who had come to congratulate Virgil utterly stunned. The sight before me made my blood run cold. The scene in front of me brought back memories of my past life. Back then, Wade and Phyllis had also appeared stark naked in our new home like this, but I only panicked for a moment before quickly regaining my composure. My husband is Virgil, not that despicable and shameless Wade. I should also have confidence that he wouldn't do anything to betray me. Recalling the unusual behavior of Wade and Phyllis these past few days, this must be a trap they set up. They deliberately caused this incident today to tarnish Virgil's reputation and prevent him from succeeding as the heir. Sure enough, the next moment, Wade also arrived at the bridal chamber, feigning surprise as he said, Phyllis, what's going on here? Phyllis immediately threw herself onto Wade, weeping like a rain-soaked pear blossom as she cried, Wade, Phyllis can't go on living. I was just trying to be kind by seeking out my brother-in-law to toast and congratulate him. But who knew he would attempt to take advantage of me? If you hadn't arrived in time, I would have been violated by him. With that, she paid no heed to her nearly naked body and buried her head in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. At this moment, I finally pieced together Phyllis and Wade's entire scheme. I couldn't help but narrow my eyes. No wonder Wade and Phyllis insisted on staying at Terrence's house. They had been planning for this very day all along. Wade roared in fury, Uncle, how could you do this to Phyllis? She's my fiancée. How could you commit such an immoral act? Phyllis wailed in grief. Virgil, you lecherous monster who even preys on your nephew's bride-to-be. What right do you have to be the heir of the Terrence family? Someone please stand up for me. Her face, usually as pure as a little white flower, was now filled with hatred and madness. Margaret, if I can't have it, neither will you. That day in the hospital room, Phyllis almost became Wade's discarded pawn. It was she who came up with this vicious plan. Wade only then brought her back into Terrence's house. I watched the frenzied Phyllis with cold eyes, then scanned the entire new house. Phyllis, is what you said really true? Wade snarled with a twisted face. Margaret, even if Virgil is your husband, the fact remains that he did such beastly things to Phyllis. Do you still want to defend him? He couldn't understand why, just a month ago, I was deeply in love with him, yet suddenly my feelings had changed. I let out a cold laugh. Of course he wouldn't understand the depth of the enmity between us. How many of my innocent children had died by his hand? Phyllis let out a maddened wail. Grandma Terence was quickly brought over, frowning as she said, "What are you arguing about on such a joyous day?" Phyllis saw her as if spotting a savior and immediately rushed over. "Grandma, Virgil tried to rape me. Please stand up for me, or I'll dash my brains out against the walls of your Terence family." Grandma Terence felt her vision darken. Looking at Virgil in disbelief, she knew this child well. He was absolutely not the type to be ruled by his baser instincts. Yet Phyllis, why did she appear in their new home? Grandma Terrence's aged face darkened as she said, "If Virgil has truly wronged you, I will not let it slide. But if someone is deliberately harming him, I won't spare them either." Her imposing aura was overwhelming. Phyllis flinched but quickly mustered her courage and said, "Grandma, go ahead and investigate. After all, the pure remain pure, and the filthy stay filthy." With that, she glared at me fiercely, her eyes brimming with overwhelming resentment that seemed on the verge of spilling out. I couldn't be bothered to pay her any attention and walked over to Virgil, whispering, "No matter how much we tried to guard against it, we still couldn't prevent them from succeeding." Virgil gave a bitter smile. "I was too careless and fell right into their trap." I shook my head. How could it be Virgil's carelessness? It was clearly Wade and Phyllis who were shameless enough to frame Virgil in such a despicable way. At that moment, I made up my mind. I couldn't let them continue stirring up trouble in Terrence's house. They had to pay a bloody price for what they'd done. Grandma Terence, after speaking, she ordered them all to be taken to the hall for questioning. Phyllis looked aggrieved, crying pitifully. Virgil remained composed, standing to the side. Grandma Terence sat coldly in the hall and said, "Phyllis, you just claimed that Virgil attempted to assault you. Explain clearly what exactly happened." Phyllis immediately wiped her tears and said pitifully, "I knew today was Uncle's special day, so I came specifically to offer him a toast, but as soon as he saw me, he went crazy, trying to tear at my clothes," and almost, at this point, she seemed to recall something extremely terrifying and broke down in sobs. The crowd below was utterly confused by what they saw. They had come to celebrate Virgil's succession as the heir, never expecting such a scandal to unfold. Could it be Virgil was truly overcome by lust and intended to take advantage of Phyllis, this little beauty? Grandma Terence turned to Virgil and said, "Virgil, what do you have to say for yourself?" Virgil replied, "Madam, I never pulled at her clothes, nor did I take any liberties with her." Wade snarled furiously, "That's bullshit. If you didn't pull her clothes, how did they come off? If you didn't take advantage of Phyllis, did she throw herself at you? Clearly, you were captivated by Phyllis's beauty and couldn't keep your hands to yourself." I almost wanted to laugh coldly. "So you're attracted to Phyllis's beauty, Wade? Wade, do you really think everyone is as brainless as you?" Virgil also spoke bluntly. "Many uncles here know what kind of person I am. Though not perfect, I am known for my integrity. Over all these years, has anyone ever seen me involved in any scandal? Why would I suddenly assault my sister-in-law on such an important day? Others might do such things, but I, Virgil, would never." Hearing this, I could hardly resist cheering for Virgil. Isn't the one who assaulted his sister-in-law none other than Wade? Sure enough, Virgil's words immediately drew everyone's gaze toward Wade. Wade reacted as if his tail had been stepped on, angrily retorting, "Virgil, stop beating around the bush here, one thing at a time. The fact that you took liberties with my wife is already set in stone. If you know what's good for you, admit it now." I chimed in to twist the knife. "Admit it? Why should he confess to something he didn't do?" "Wade, the old lady hasn't even finished investigating this matter, yet you're so eager to pin the blame on your uncle. What kind of logic is that? Or are you just dying for Virgil to have made advances on your wife?" As soon as I said these words, Wade broke out in a cold sweat. He had acted too hastily. He quickly added, "I was just momentarily outraged. And the facts are already laid out before everyone. Virgil may have been a gentleman in the past, but that doesn't mean he is now. Who knows, he might be a wolf in sheep's clothing, just hiding it well all this time." Wade had always fallen short of his uncle in every way since childhood, especially in reputation. They were like night and day. Now that he had a chance to smear him, of course he wouldn't let it slip. But the crowd clearly didn't buy Wade's nonsense. Wade, cornered and desperate, even raised his fist to throw a punch at Virgil. But I noticed something was off. Wade's fingernails had a faint layer of white powder. "Stop!" Wade froze, and the others stared at me intently. I grabbed Wade's hand and coldly addressed the group. "He has poison on his hands." As soon as I said this, Wade frantically shook me off and panicked, saying, "Margaret, don't talk nonsense." At this moment, He was covered in cold sweat, desperately trying to wipe off the white powder on his hands. But how could I give him that chance? Grandma, where is the family doctor? Grandma Terence frowned but immediately sent for a doctor. I said to the doctor, go see what good stuff the young master has hidden under his fingernails, and show it to everyone. The doctor carefully scraped off some powder, then pinched it between his fingers and sniffed it beneath his nose. His face instantly turned extremely grim. It's cyanide, cyanide. My gaze gradually turned icy. Cyanide is highly toxic. Wade, do you have anything else to say? Wade's expression changed abruptly. Beads of cold sweat covered his forehead as he threw himself before Grandma Terence, feigning innocence. Grandma, I don't know what this is. It must have gotten there by accident. I retorted coldly, by accident. Cyanide is a deadly poison. How could you just casually come into contact with it? Do you think we're all fools to be played by you? If Virgil got punched, scraped his skin, and was poisoned, Wade would surely claim in the future that he committed suicide out of guilt. Grandma Terence also turned a cold face toward Wade, saying, Wade, you truly are my good grandson. How could you attempt to poison your own uncle? Wade immediately knelt down, feigning pitifulness. Grandma, no, I really don't know where I came into contact with this stuff. It was an honest mistake. How can you prove I meant to harm anyone? Moreover, Phyllis is my daughter-in-law. Would I use my own daughter-in-law's virtue to falsely accuse him? Phyllis immediately played along, squeezing out 2 tears. That's right, Grandma, as a pure and innocent young woman, why would I use my own reputation to falsely accuse someone? Sister, uncle, are you trying to drive me to my death? I sneered. Pure and innocent. Someone who climbs into her own brother-in-law's bed dares to call herself pure and innocent. Then there are no impure people left in this world. Phyllis flushed with anger upon hearing my words. Margaret, what do you mean by that? Wade and I are deeply in love. How does that make me impure? If you can't provide evidence, just wait for me to sue you in court. At worst, we'll all go down together, stimulated by me. She finally couldn't help but reveal her crazy side. I just chuckled lightly. You want evidence? Fine, I'll show you. Phyllis's face, already pale from her recent miscarriage, turned even whiter in an instant as she looked at me warily and said, Margaret, don't you dare frame me. I'm innocent. I look at my increasingly ferocious sister and can't help but mock myself. Bringing her home back then was truly the worst decision of my life, but fortunately, heaven has given me a chance to start over. Everything is finally coming to an end. With a long sigh, I say to Grandma Terence, Grandma, I need a basin of clean water. Wade watched me warily, trying to stop me, but Grandma Terence waved her hand, and immediately a servant brought a basin of clean water. I took Virgil's left hand, stained with red wine, and immersed it completely in the basin of clear water. The red wine dispersed in the basin, turning the clear water a faint shade of red. I looked at Phyllis and said, Do you dare take a sip? Phyllis turned pale and refused angrily. You want me to drink his hand-washing water? How disgusting. I won't drink it. I scanned the crowd and declared, Everyone, I've already proven Virgil's innocence. At this moment, the crowd was still confused, until a highly respected shareholder stepped forward. Miss Margaret, what do you mean by that? Can a basin of water really prove Virgil's innocence? I nodded, my eyes filled with wisdom. Yes, this basin of water is enough to prove it. Do you all remember that just now, Virgil and Phyllis both said she came to propose a toast, but when we arrived, Virgil wasn't drinking. Instead, there was wine on his arm and palm. What does this mean? Clearly, he broke free from that glass of wine. Although the wine has almost dried up, fortunately, putting it in water can still dilute some of it. Please, doctor, take another look for us and see what's in this wine. As soon as I said this, the family doctor immediately stepped forward and dipped his hand into the basin. He first sniffed it, then licked the water on his hand. Suddenly, the family doctor's eyes became dazed, and his breathing grew rapid. I immediately splashed the tea beside me onto his head. Only then did the family doctor snap out of it. He panicked and said, It's an aphrodisiac. Someone has laced this water with a strong dose of aphrodisiac. Wade shuddered violently, then said guiltily, You're talking nonsense. Why would my wife do such a thing? Phyllis also turned deathly pale, her face drained of all color. Sister, you can't save your husband by slandering me like this. I'm the victim here. I sneered coldly. If I'm not mistaken, you laced this wine with so much aphrodisiac precisely to irrefutably frame Virgil for assaulting you, didn't you? Otherwise, given the sheer difference in your physiques, if Virgil truly wanted to force himself on you, would he even need aphrodisiacs? He could simply cover your mouth. Do you honestly believe you'd make a single sound? Do you think he'd let you scream loud enough for all of us to come running? My words were like a final death knell. Phyllis completely broke down. The surrounding crowd suddenly understood everything. Indeed, Virgil is nearly 6 feet 3 inches tall. If he really wanted to overpower a frail woman, wouldn't it be effortless? I stared directly at Phyllis and Virgil, enunciating each word. The two of you have been scheming from the very beginning. First, you begged Grandma to let you stay at Terrence's house, then deliberately chose the day Virgil was to take over to act. All to make the shareholders and relatives witness Virgil's true nature and prevent him from smoothly assuming the heir's position. This way, Wade would still have a chance to reclaim the throne. Wade, Phyllis, am I right? Both of them wore expressions of utter shock, their scalps tingling as if they'd seen a ghost while looking at me. Phyllis ground her teeth with an audible creak. Margaret, why must you always stand in my way? Why? At this moment, she could no longer maintain her innocent facade, her face twisting into a visage of pure ferocity. What was rightfully mine, the position of the Winston family's eldest daughter, was stolen by you, and now, what should have been my position as the matriarch of the Terrence family is also being taken away by you. No matter what I do, you always overshadow me. Why don't you just die? Why won't you die? Phyllis screamed with heart-wrenching fury, pouring out years of hatred she had harbored against me. Hearing this, I could only feel a deep sense of irony. The Winston family eldest daughter position should have been hers. Has she forgotten that if I hadn't kindly taken her home back then, she wouldn't even have qualified for the title of Winston family second daughter, and the Terrence family matriarch position? She only had a chance to be remotely involved because she stole my fiancé. Yet she actually believes these things should have rightfully belonged to her. My heart was filled with both anger and desolation. The heart of an ungrateful wretch can never be warmed. But I failed to notice Phyllis's expression, which had shifted from ferocious to utterly deranged. Margaret, today I will perish together with you. Her eyes were bloodshot as she lunged at me like a madwoman. Margaret, watch out. Virgil widened his eyes and immediately threw himself in front of me, forcefully pushing Phyllis away. It was the first time I'd seen Virgil look so tense, leaving me both astonished and deeply touched, but I didn't notice. Wade was giving an extremely venomous look at that moment. Virgil, Margaret, go die together. He actually pulled out a pistol from his chest and fired 2 shots at us abruptly. Phyllis was solely focused on strangling me and didn't see Wade with the gun at all. She reached for my neck with a ferocious expression, impartial and unbiased. It blocked right in front of me. Immediately after, she let out a scream, pierced through the heart by a bullet. Who would have thought that the woman Wade deeply loved in his past life would end up dying by his own hand? Truly, what goes around comes around. Without a second thought, in that split second, I forcefully pushed Virgil away, taking the remaining bullet for him. Virgil's face instantly drained of color as he let out a heart-wrenching cry. Margaret, Margaret. I touched his pale face and smiled with relief. Don't be afraid, I've already died once before. In this life, the vengeance I sought has been fulfilled, and those I needed to protect are safe. That's enough. My vision began to darken as I watched Phyllis's lifeless, unblinking eyes, and saw Wade being handcuffed and taken away by the police. Justice is served, and retribution is inevitable. My vengeance is finally complete. Phyllis is dead, and Wade, that scumbag, will never recover from this in his lifetime. Virgil immediately carried me to the best hospital for treatment. Fortunately, the bullet didn't hit any vital organs, and after 2 months, I miraculously woke up. Later, under the court's investigation, Wade's years of dirty deeds were all uncovered, including his poisoning of Virgil. Wade was ultimately sentenced to death. That day, I made a special trip to witness the execution, hearing the gunshot echo through the reed marshes. I finally felt at peace, and all the hatred dissipated like mist. On the way home, Virgil swung my hand and said, Darling, in the past your eyes were only on Wade and Phyllis. From now on, could you look at me instead? I smiled while gazing at his handsome profile. My tone as gentle as in our past life. All right, from now on, my eyes will only be on you.